I discovered my daughter had ransacked my life while I was chasing history through Rome. When I walked through that front door, expecting welcome, I found my bedroom stolen, my possessions dumped in darkness, and strangers sleeping in my sheets. But I wouldn't beg. I wouldn't grovel. Instead, I smiled and delivered 3 words that changed everything. Pack your things. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and share in the comments what time you're joining me from right now. I stood in the foyer that July morning, my suitcase resting against my leg, clutching a white envelope containing $2,000 in crisp bills. The weight felt significant. 20 hundreds I'd withdrawn just yesterday. "Rachel," I called toward the living room. She materialized in the doorway, her face glowing from her phone's pale light, that ubiquitous luminescence I'd grown accustomed to witnessing. Her eyes never lifted from the screen as she drifted closer, her thumb working in that mechanical scroll, that digital trance so many people inhabited now. I extended the envelope forward. "Here's the money for that roof repair you mentioned. $2,000 should do it, correct?" She accepted it without making eye contact. Her thumb flipped through the bills, tallying them with practiced efficiency. The phone remained glued to her other hand. I waited, hoping for warmth, acknowledgement, something human. Connection felt like too much to ask. "The contractor warned it was urgent," I added. "Yeah, whatever. I'll handle it," she replied, already pivoting away, the envelope disappearing into her back pocket as she returned to that glowing screen and whatever held her captive there. The disappointment stung, sharp and immediate. I pushed it down. She'd always kept me at arm's length. Ever since her mother's passing, something fundamental had hardened between us. I'd learned to accept that distance. Give her room. Be patient. That's what fathers do. Heavy footsteps approached from the kitchen, casual and unhurried. Marcus emerged holding a beer bottle, condensation streaming down the amber glass. 9 in the morning and he was drinking. He raised the bottle in mock greeting. "Have a great trip, Perk." The nickname scraped against every nerve. I'd corrected him repeatedly. "Marcus, I'd appreciate it if you call me Douglas." Not difficult. Just respect. He was already turning back toward the kitchen. "Sure thing, man." I watched him vanish through the doorway. He'd lived in my house for 8 months now. "Temporary financial difficulties," Rachel had explained when they first moved in. Temporary had stretched and warped into something undefined, reshaping itself with endless excuses and broken promises. But I hadn't pushed back. What else could I do? Throw my daughter and her husband into the street? That wasn't who I was. Before Marcus disappeared completely, I caught something. A glance exchanged between him and Rachel, quick and loaded with unspoken meaning. Her eyes flicked toward him, then away. He nodded subtly. Both retreated to their separate corners as though nothing had transpired between them. Paranoia, I told myself. Travel anxiety before takeoff. I seized my suitcase handle and headed for the door. The airport moved with mechanical precision. Check-in, security, gate. I settled into my seat on the Rome-bound flight, unfurled my worn copy of a Roman history book, let my spine melt into the cushion. 6 months of planning had crystallized into this moment, leading an educational expedition for retired academics through Italy, sharing my passion for ancient history, for discovery, for those weathered stones holding centuries of triumph and devastation. This was what retirement should be, living dreams you'd deferred for so long. The engines roared to life. Portland disappeared beneath clouds. The Atlantic churned below, while sunshine climbed higher at home. Then came the afternoon descent. Back in my bedroom, my sanctuary, the master bedroom upstairs where I'd slept beside my wife for 33 years before cancer consumed her, Rachel and Marcus stood in the doorway. "Finally," he said, his voice carrying steel. "Time to move." Rachel hesitated, her hand lingering on the frame. She stepped inside slowly, surveying the space as if seeing it for the first time. Her gaze landed on the framed photograph on my nightstand, her mother and me at the coastline, wind destroying her hair, her face radiant with laughter. Rachel picked it up, studying it carefully. "He won't care about this," Marcus said, reaching over and claiming the frame from her trembling hands. He placed it face down atop a cardboard box they'd brought upstairs. "That's my mom," Rachel's voice dropped to barely audible. Then we'll keep it safe downstairs. He won't even know it's gone. Marcus was already yanking clothes from my closet, dumping them into boxes without folding a single garment. My parents need a real room, not some basement cave. They're elderly. They deserve actual comfort. Rachel's voice was hesitant. Marcus, maybe we should wait until— Wait for what? He spun to face her, hands planted on his hips. He's gone for 2 weeks. My parents arrive in 3 days. This is happening. Rachel stood motionless, conflict painting itself across her features. But this is his room, and this is our house now. Marcus's voice took that sharp edge it always acquired when he wanted dominance, dismissive of any alternative. He's old, Rachel. He doesn't need this much space. What's he going to do? Throw us out? We're family. Books surrendered from shelves. My reading chair got dragged toward the doorway. The bedside lamp my wife had chosen, ceramic, hand-painted with delicate blue flowers, vanished into a box. Rachel participated, her movements mechanical, her expression carefully neutral. Whenever doubt flickered across her face, Marcus would launch into another justification about his parents' needs, about elderly people and stairs, about how I'd comprehend, about how everything was logical. By nightfall, the room had metamorphosed. Their bed replaced mine. Marcus's parents' belongings colonized my closet. A new lock gleamed against the door. Marcus had installed it himself, the drill boring through wood, shavings cascading to the floor like my existence being systematically erased, one curl at a time. Meanwhile, I stood on a terrace in Rome. The sun was bleeding gold across buildings that had witnessed empires rise and crumble, glory followed by ruin. I breathed air perfumed with centuries and possibility. My group had assembled behind me, exclaiming over the panorama, but I'd positioned myself apart to experience this instant alone. Joy. Pure, unfiltered joy. This was existence. This was reason. I stood watching colors dissolve across the Roman sky, feeling more vibrant than I had in years, unaware that everything I'd abandoned was being methodically taken from me. 2 weeks of European. Discovery and laughter had drained me, thoroughly yet contentedly, as the taxi pulled away from my driveway. That late Tuesday evening, jet lag made my muscles feel leaden, made my suitcase seem to contain stones rather than soiled clothes and souvenirs. But I was home. The word tasted like honey. Lights welcomed from inside. Someone had waited for my arrival. Considerate, I turned my key, pushed the door open, reached for the foyer light switch automatically. My exhausted eyes needed additional brightness. Then I froze. 2 strangers I'd never encountered sat on my couch watching my television in my living room. The woman had silver hair secured in a loose bun. The man grasped the remote, frozen mid-click. They rotated their heads toward me in perfect synchronization, their expressions mirroring the bewilderment flooding my own face. Several seconds dissolved into silence. Nobody spoke. My fatigue-addled brain struggled to decode what I was witnessing, searching for logical explanation. Home invasion? Impossible. They looked too settled, too familiar with the space. Medical crisis demanding strangers? Nothing appeared wrong. Had I walked into an unfamiliar house? No. There was my bookshelf, my reading chair, my mother's painting gracing the wall. Who exactly are you? The words emerged harsher than intended. The man lowered the remote slightly. The woman leaned forward, raising her voice toward the back. Marcus, someone's here. Understanding began materializing, cold and unwelcome as footsteps emerged from the kitchen. Marcus appeared, beer perpetually in hand as always, his expression annoyingly serene. Oh, Douglas is back. He gestured between us like an evening host. Dad, this is my father-in-law. I mentioned him. Douglas, these are my parents. They're staying for a couple weeks. I stared at him, then the elderly strangers, then back to Marcus. Visiting a couple weeks. The words refused to arrange into sense. Visiting? Since when? Marcus took a leisurely sip of beer, waved his free hand dismissively. About 10 days now. Rachel didn't text you? No. My voice sounded strange in my own ears. She didn't. Huh? Well, jet lag, right? Makes you forget to check messages. He said this as though I bore responsibility, as though his complete failure to request permission was somehow my oversight. Anyway, Dad, Mom, this is Douglas. Douglas, these are Tom and Barbara Winters. Tom nodded reluctantly. Barbara managed a tight smile. They seemed pleasant enough, bewildered, but pleasant. This wasn't their burden to bear. They probably believed their son had secured proper accommodations, had obtained approval, had behaved respectfully. I required solitude to process this. Excuse me. I grabbed my suitcase, climbed toward the stairs. My legs felt unstable. 14 hours of exhausting travel, and now this. I desperately needed my bed, my sanctuary, quiet to untangle whatever was happening. I reached the second floor, turned down the familiar hallway toward my bedroom. The door was sealed shut. Unusual, I typically left it ajar. I shifted my suitcase to my other hand, grasped the knob, twisted it. Locked. Alarm spiraled into panic. I knocked gently at first, then with increasing urgency. The door cracked open. Barbara stood there now in a bathrobe, her hair wrapped in curlers, clearly ready to surrender to sleep. She regarded me with polite but absolute finality. I'm sorry, but we've already retired for the night. I stood there, suitcase in hand, struggling to form words. This is my bedroom. Her confusion deepened. Marcus said this was our guest room. Where are my belongings? I'm not certain. Perhaps ask Marcus. The door closed. The lock clicked into place. I stood in my own hallway, barred from my own bedroom by a stranger wearing a bathrobe. The absurdity would have been hilarious if my chest weren't constricting, if my hands weren't beginning to tremble. Downstairs, I discovered Rachel in the kitchen, wiping down counters already gleaming. Her back confronted me. Of course it did. What's happening? Where are all my things? My voice cracked, pitched higher than normal. She continued her circular motions, repetitive, evasive. Dad, don't cause a commotion. Don't cause a commotion. The volume startled even me. I returned home to complete strangers occupying my house, my bedroom, locked. She finally spun around, but her gaze fixed somewhere beyond my shoulder. We relocated your belongings to the basement. Marcus's parents require a proper room. They're elderly. Stairs present difficulty. She delivered this justification as though it were perfectly reasonable, as though I should have anticipated my displacement. You understand. You didn't even call. You didn't ask, I said. Marcus entered then, positioning himself between us, defending her or commanding the situation. Possibly both. Douglas, don't be childish. It's temporary. Something scalding rose in my throat. Childish. This is my house and we all live here. His tone dripped with condescension, the kind you'd deploy with a bewildered toddler. My parents required comfortable arrangements. Besides, you're alone. You don't need such an expansive room. The basement contains everything necessary. Everything necessary? I repeated slowly, tasting the bitterness. Precisely. He misinterpreted. My silence as capitulation, nodded as though we'd reached accord. Now, if you'll forgive us, it's late. We can address this further tomorrow when you've recovered from travel. He ushered Rachel from the kitchen. She departed without objection, without looking backward. I stood there isolated, fluorescent, lights humming overhead, their footsteps receding toward the living room, toward normality, toward existence continuing above while I'd been relegated below. The basement stairs descended into shadow. I flicked the switch. A bare bulb revealed concrete walls, exposed pipes, the reality of my new existence. My belongings lay scattered in the corner, clothing spilling from carelessly packed boxes, books stacked haphazardly, some first editions I'd collected throughout decades, now treated like garage sale discards. My furniture had been positioned without consideration for comfort or aesthetics. The bed frame was the ancient guest bed, springs that announced every motion. I settled on the edge. The springs howled loudly, protesting my weight. The mattress sagged in the center. Musty air invaded my nostrils, that distinctive underground scent of earth and dampness and abandonment. Atop one box sat the photograph. My wife and me at the coastline, wind in her hair, joy radiating from both our faces. At least they'd preserved it. Tiny mercy. I lifted it, held it in both hands. Smooth glass, beloved faces, a moment when family meant something entirely different. Something inside me fractured. Not grief. I'd worked through that years ago when cancer took her. This was different, more piercing. This was the sound of delusion shattering. The delusion that family meant protection, that kindness guaranteed. Respect that my daughter still perceived me as her father rather than as an obstacle to be displaced like outdated furnishings. I positioned the photograph carefully on concrete, leaned back against the thin pillow, stared upward at the ceiling. Above me, floorboards creaked, footsteps traveled, voices murmured. Existence happening in my house, in the territories I'd been banished from. Tomorrow, I resolved. Tomorrow, I'd determine what this meant. Tomorrow, I'd choose my response. Yet already, beneath the hurt and humiliation, something was forming. Something small, something solid, a seed of something I couldn't yet identify. It settled in my chest alongside the pain, quietly taking root. I closed my eyes, exhaustion finally pulling me under. The springs protested one final time as I repositioned, seeking comfort on a bed that wasn't mine, in a space that wasn't meant for residence, the basement of my own house. Morning delivered a headache and the indignity of a back refusing to straighten. I woke on that basement mattress, every joint screaming. Gray light infiltrated through the small window near the ceiling. The dampness had penetrated my bones. Something that never occurred upstairs with my proper bed and climate control. I lay contemplating concrete walls. Yesterday's events cycling endlessly. Not a nightmare. Real. My daughter had exiled me to the basement of my own property to make room for strangers. Straightening required overwhelming effort. The cramped basement bathroom was freezing. The shower produced only lukewarm water, no matter how long I allowed it to run. I dressed in creased clothes from my unpacked suitcase. Nowhere proper to organize anything. Voices drifted from upstairs. Laughter, the domestic symphony of morning. I climbed the basement stairs, the sounds intensifying, kitchen commotion, coffee brewing, someone recounting a story. When I emerged into the hallway, I discovered the entire household assembled at the breakfast table. Rachel positioned at the stove, flipping pancakes, Marcus gesturing expansively as he entertained his parents with some anecdote. Tom and Barbara chuckled on cue, the scene I'd been deliberately excluded from. I moved toward the coffee maker, poured a cup. The first taste stopped me cold. Wrong. Bitter. Inferior. Nothing resembling what I'd purchased for 20 years. I turned to address the kitchen. "Where's my coffee? The brand I always buy?" Rachel didn't lift her eyes from the griddle. "Dad, don't be so particular. Coffee is coffee. It's not about preferences. I've purchased the identical brand for 2 decades. She flipped a pancake with unnecessary force. "Well, this is what we consume now." I set the cup down, noticing for the first time the table's arrangement. 5 plates, 5 sets of silverware, 5 occupied chairs. I moved toward the remaining empty spot and sat. Nobody offered me sustenance. After a prolonged moment, Rachel glanced over her shoulder. "Did you already eat?" "No, I simply woke up." She shrugged, returning attention to the stove. "Well, I prepared precisely enough for 5. The arithmetic landed like a slap across my face. 5 people mattered. I didn't factor into the equation. "You prepared breakfast for 5 people," I stated slowly. "In my house, and I'm not one of them." Marcus interrupted, his tone playful, as though I were being unreasonable. "There's cereal in the cabinet, Douglas. Help yourself." I stood and approached the refrigerator, desperate for distance from their casual cruelty. I pulled the door, nearly barren. Beer, Marcus's preferred beverage naturally, some picked-over takeout containers, condiments, nothing substantial, nothing I would have selected. The freezer held additional beer and frozen pizzas. I stood there, cold air cascading over my face, understanding, crystallizing. This had been occurring gradually while I arranged my trip, while I was abroad. My groceries systematically replaced with theirs, my preferences methodically erased, my home transformed through incremental substitution. I closed the door. My appetite had evaporated anyway. I required escape, clarity, somewhere neutral. The walk to the municipal library consumed 15 minutes. Crisp morning air, recognizable streets, movement facilitating mental processing. Inside, I wandered through the history section without actually seeing titles, pulling books and replacing them. Beside the legal resources, I observed a woman, approximately my age, examining family law volumes, property rights, elder protection statutes. She caught me looking and offered a knowing smile. "Not cheerful reading material," she observed. Her directness invited response. We ended up at the library's modest coffee shop. Her name was Beatrice Holmes, retired real estate attorney, sharp eyes that perceived everything. She shared her narrative unbidden, as though she could sense I required hearing it. Her son had executed comparable schemes, incrementally assuming control, modifying documentation, treating her as incompetent. "They imagine because we're older, we're defenseless," she said, stirring her coffee. I disclosed everything: the basement, the strangers in my bedroom, the breakfast mathematics, the systematic erasure. Words tumbled out that I hadn't intended to share. Her face hardened as I spoke. "Douglas, this isn't merely disrespect. This is the beginning." She leaned forward. "People orchestrating this don't stop at discomfort. They're maneuvering to claim everything. Claim everything. Verify your documents, your bank accounts, everything," she commanded, her gaze penetrating. "I'm betting you'll discover this has been strategized for quite some time." That frigid sensation spread through my chest again. She slid a business card across the table, tapping it twice. "Contact me after you investigate. You'll require assistance." I walked home, dread accumulating with each step. The house was quieter upon my return. The Winters must have departed sightseeing. I descended to the basement, opened my laptop, and commenced searching. Email first. Utility bills. I searched for recent ones. Nothing. Peculiar. I accessed Portland General Electric's website, entered my account number. The contact information displayed had been modified 3 months prior. Email address, Rachel. Phone number, Rachel. Authorization notation. Daughter assuming account management due to father's declining health. My hands commenced shaking. Water utility, identical pattern. Gas company, identical. Internet provider, identical. Every utility systematically reassigned to her contact information, all declaring I possessed declining health, required management assistance, couldn't navigate my affairs independently. Cold sensation permeated my body. I initiated a spreadsheet documenting every inconsistency, each unauthorized modification, each falsehood. The laptop's glow illuminated my face in the dim basement as columns populated with proof. Above me, floorboards protested, voices escalated, Marcus and Rachel arguing. I heard through the ceiling. Marcus's voice furious. "The old man's been everywhere today. Electric company, bank, notary. He's assembling evidence." Rachel, fear evident. "What if he contacts police?" Marcus, contemptuous. "He won't. He's too feeble, too concerned about family reputation. Besides, we've got insurance. All those companies assume he's declining. We simply guarantee everyone else accepts it. We finish what we've begun." I sat motionless at my desk, phone in hand. They weren't surrendering. They were intensifying, strategizing to destroy my credibility, manufacturing a narrative of decline, incompetence, instability. I located Beatrice's number and pressed call. She answered immediately, voice alert. "What did you find?" I gazed at the evidence surrounding me. Everything you predicted. 3 months of deliberate modifications, $8,000 in fabricated charges. They informed utility companies I'm declining. I'm not. They might have manipulated my property documentation. Sharp intake. "Douglas, this constitutes serious fraud. You require legal representation. I need more than representation. I require them expelled from my house legally." Silence. Then decisively, "Tomorrow, 9 to bring everything you discovered. We're securing a lawyer." Above me, voices quieted, orchestrating their subsequent betrayal, presumably. "Good," I said, staring upward at the floorboards of my stolen existence. I'm finished being passive. I woke with something absent for days. Direction. No longer lying in shock. No longer absorbing humiliation. Beatrice had guided me through fundamentals last evening. What to verify, where to proceed, how to document. Now I possessed a blueprint. I dressed deliberately. Slacks, button-down shirt, quality shoes, attire of a man conducting serious business, not a displaced father sheltering in a basement. I examined my reflection in the small mirror. Presentable, capable, dignified. Upstairs remained silent. Everyone sleeping. I discovered the cereal Marcus had referenced, consumed quickly standing at the counter, and departed before anyone stirred. My vehicle started without hesitation. First destination: Portland General Electric's customer service branch on Southeast Division Street. The representative, Sandra, was middle-aged, possessing compassionate eyes that had probably witnessed considerable hardship. I presented my identification and account number. I require information regarding when my contact information was modified and who authorized it. She navigated screens, clicked, scrolled. 3 months prior, changed by Rachel Patterson. She introduced herself as your authorized representative, claimed you were experiencing cognitive decline and required management. My jaw tightened. I never consented. I possess no health complications whatsoever. I recently orchestrated and directed an educational expedition throughout Europe. Her demeanor shifted to empathy, a look indicating she'd encountered this previously. I'm regrettable, Mr. Patterson. This transpires periodically with family members. We mandate minimal documentation for modifications, perhaps excessively minimal. I replicated the identical process at the water district, gas utility, internet provider. Identical account everywhere, identical deception, identical 3-month duration. This wasn't impulsive. This was orchestrated, methodical. By the time I arrived at my financial institution, the Hawthorne branch of U.S. Bank, my controlled fury had solidified into something harder. Michael Torres, the customer service representative, accessed my records. His expression shifted when he witnessed the charges. I directed his attention to the fraudulent expenses. I'm unacquainted with any of these transactions. How is my daughter registered as authorized? His screen scrolled. There's a signature here from 6 months prior. He rotated the monitor. I gazed at my supposed signature. Proximate yet incorrect. The capital D didn't curve correctly. The S didn't flow naturally. Someone had rehearsed, achieved approximate accuracy, but specifics were misaligned. That's not my signature, I stated quietly. Are you confident? Signatures occasionally deviate. I'm a retired educator. I've endorsed my name thousands of instances on papers, records, formal documentation. Examine my driver's license. The D is completely divergent. The S doesn't flow like this. This is counterfeit. Michael's expression grew severe. Subsequently, you require a police report for identity theft and will need a formal dispute document for these transactions. He calculated. 8,247.30 tau. That magnitude struck like physical force. Over $8,000 stolen. We'll commence the dispute proceedings, Michael said. But Mr. Patterson, this happens more frequently than you'd imagine with elderly clients. I'm not incompetent, I interrupted. I'm experiencing systematic defrauding. That's distinct, he nodded deliberately. Indeed, there's considerable difference. My final destination was Stephen Blake's notarization office, situated in a converted residence near Laurelhurst Park. Stephen had notarized my will years prior, understood my signature intimately. "Stephen, I must verify my will remains unaltered." He retrieved the file, distributed it across his desk. Everything appeared standard. The house would transfer to Rachel upon my departure, as intended when I established it following my wife's passing. "However," Stephen said, examining his documentation, "you should investigate your title documentation recently." My stomach collapsed. Explanation: in Oregon, possessing access to your documents enables attempting to append themselves to property titles utilizing quitclaim deeds, essentially attempting to grant themselves fractional ownership. He observed me carefully. It's technically illegal if they forge it, but it generates substantial complications to untangle. How do I determine if this occurred? Official title search. I can initiate it immediately. Expedited processing requires 2 to 3 business days. I financed it immediately. 2 to 3 business days. A ticking clock measuring down to revelation. Upon returning that afternoon, the house was abandoned again. I descended downstairs and distributed everything across my temporary workspace. Constructed a comprehensive spreadsheet with columns: date, service, unauthorized modification, amount, documentation, electric company, unauthorized contact modification, deceptive claims of declining fitness, water, corresponding pattern, gas, corresponding, internet, corresponding, credit card, 8,247 in fraudulent charges, property title, investigation results pending in 3 days. I photographed every document using my phone, transferred everything to encrypted cloud storage, generated backup duplicates. The proof mounted, irrefutable and damaging. Evening descended. I heard the entrance open, voices returning, footsteps upstairs, then raised voices once more. Marcus, furious. "The old man's been everywhere today. Electric company, financial institution, notary. He's establishing proof." Rachel, frightened. "What happens if he involves police?" Marcus's tone carried disdain. "He won't. He's physically frail, too apprehensive about family standing. Besides, we possess protection. All those businesses consider him deteriorating. We simply guarantee everyone else accepts it, too." Silence. Subsequently, Rachel reluctant. "You want to present him as unreliable?" "We've initiated it. Currently, we conclude it." I remained frozen at my desk, phone in palm. They weren't retreating. They were advancing, orchestrating to obliterate my dependability, fabricate everyone's conviction I was declining, incompetent, unstable. I navigated to Beatrice's number and pressed call. She responded instantly, voice prepared. "What did you uncover?" I examined the proof distributed before me. "Everything you cautioned me about." 3 months of deliberate transformations, $8,000 in manufactured charges. They declared utility businesses I'm declining. I'm not. They might have manipulated my title deed. Sharp inhalation. "Douglas, this represents serious criminality. You require legal counsel. Tomorrow morning, 9. Bring absolutely everything discovered. We're arranging attorney assistance." Above me, voices had quieted, arranging their subsequent move presumably. "Affirmed," I said, staring at the ceiling, at the floorboards encompassing my stolen existence. I'm finished remaining defensive. Stumptown coffee radiated hope and fresh possibility when I pushed through the door at 9 the subsequent morning. The bell chimed above. Beatrice occupied a corner table, 2 steaming cups already positioned, spiral notebook open, numerous thick legal reference guides stacked beside her like ammunition. She observed my arrival, signaled to the unoccupied chair. "Gratitude for this," I said, positioning my documentation container on the surface. She dismissed the appreciation. "We're supporting each other. Additionally, I've inhabited your situation. I recognize how it feels. Currently, demonstrate everything you discovered." I unsealed the folder, distributed the proof across the compact surface. Utility corporation correspondence, financial statements, photographs of the manufactured signature, my genuine one positioned alongside their replication. The meticulous spreadsheet I'd constructed, each infraction cataloged with dates and values. Beatrice examined each document with professional precision, periodically recording observations, requesting clarifying questions revealing she comprehended exactly what she was examining. Ultimately, she sealed the concluding document and regarded me with serious expression. Initial principle: document absolutely everything. Every infraction, every communication, every document. You've commenced effectively, yet we require this impenetrable. She unsealed her notebook to a vacant page, sketched a line down the center. Violations on one side, actions on the other. We assembled the inventory together, her tidy legal script populating the columns. Violations: unauthorized utility account modifications at 4 distinct businesses, all inside a matching 3-month interval. Unauthorized credit card utilization totaling $8,247 at 32s. Fabricated signature on credit card authorization. Probable title deed manipulation pending verification. Physical removal from my personal bedroom. In Oregon, Beatrice described, tapping her pen on the notebook, you possess complete authority to expel anyone from your property, including relatives. 30-day notice. No justification needed. They're technically renters, month to month at best. My pen hovered on the notebook. She's my daughter. The phrase cracked in my throat. Beatrice positioned her hand upon mine. Warm, firm, stabilizing. Douglas. She held back until I met her gaze. She's not regarding you with respect. She's utilizing you. You merit superior to this. My eyes stung, yet my expression stayed resolved. This isn't retribution, Beatrice persisted, her voice firm yet gentle. This is reclaiming your existence. This is demonstrating her that actions generate repercussions. Perhaps that represents the greatest gift you can provide her. Communicate that principle now, prior to she executes this on another individual. Something transformed within me. My shoulders straightened. I grasped the pen with steady hand. Understood. What procedures am I following? We expended the subsequent hour architecting strategy. Sequentially, Beatrice transcribed as we formulated. Initially, attorney discussion for lawful eviction. She advocated for Robert Chen. Practiced in eviction and familial conflict. Ring him tomorrow dawn. Subsequently, financial safeguarding. This evening, transform every password. Terminate every card they possess authorization for. Disconnect their capital prior to they recognize anything. Subsequently, sustain documentation. Photograph absolutely everything. Preserve meticulous files with moments. Subsequently, dispute the utility modifications. Reclaim accurate management employing proof of possession. Subsequently, advise Marcus's relatives. They merit comprehension. They might terminate their assistance. I registered notes in margins, questioned statutes, schedules, conceivable complications. Upon our coffee containers sat vacant, we maintained a comprehensive battle strategy with specific procedures and transparent sequence. The return journey seemed transformed. I wasn't retreating to exile. I was entering a battlefield I designed to triumph in. I pressed through the entrance, not the side exit descending, yet the primary entrance. Marcus and Rachel occupied the couch, some reality program illuminating the display. They looked upward as I entered. Marcus deployed that ridiculous voice I'd begun loathing. Well, Douglas is back. So, have you acknowledged the revised arrangement? Difficulty dangled in his voice. Confidence I'd withdraw, shuffle to my basement corner, embrace my displacement. Yet I didn't withdraw. I halted, examined them both, permitted myself a compact, knowing grin. We'll observe, Marcus. We'll observe. Rachel's expression narrowed. She identified something divergent in my delivery, yet remained unable to classify it. I rotated toward the basement stairs, descended with upright posture, and instantaneously accessed my laptop. Correspondence to Robert Chen, legal representative. Esteemed Mr. Chen, I'm corresponding to request legal representation in a property and monetary fraud situation involving family members presently inhabiting my property without authorization. I paused, examined what I'd composed, perceived the gravity of it. This was genuine now. Formal legal procedure regarding my daughter. My phone vibrated. Communication from Beatrice. You're capable of this. Phone Chen immediately tomorrow. Meanwhile, commence monetary safeguarding this evening. I composed back, already formulating the correspondence. Gratitude for everything. I returned to the correspondence, established the circumstance in precise, factual language, connected the most incriminating proof. The forged signature assessment, the spreadsheet, the utility corporation verifications. My finger hovered across the transmission button. Above me, floorboards groaned. Voices resonated. Existence persisting in my house while I arranged to reclaim it. I pressed dispatch. The whoosh of the correspondence vanishing experienced like releasing something that couldn't be retrieved. The boundary. Yet I wasn't anxious anymore. Initially, from getting home, I perceived like myself repeatedly. Efficient, determined, commanding. I unsealed my banking interface, commenced changing protections. Individual account after another. Novel protections they'd never anticipate. Two-factor certification demanded my cellular device. Each tap dismantled a subsequent thread of their unauthorized permission. Intervals transpired. Upon I ultimately sealed the laptop, darkness had descended outside the compact basement window. Yet internally, I encountered something I hadn't perceived in intervals. Potential. The elevator doors unsealed on the 15th story of the Wells Fargo Tower, disclosing downtown Portland via expansive windows. The offices of Chen and Associates inhabited a section area, polished yet unpretentious, varnished hardwood, leather furnishings, framed certifications adorning surfaces. The receptionist directed me to a discussion chamber where Robert Chen stood, my transmitted proof currently reproduced and distributed across the surface in methodical clusters. He straightened to exchange greetings. Mid-40s, refined appearance, assured connection. Mr. Patterson, I've examined absolutely everything you communicated. Occupy the seat. I occupied the provided seat. Chen reclined across from me, digits steepled, expression grave. This constitutes quite significant situation. Let me be forthright. Your daughter and spouse have perpetrated multiple categories of criminality and monetary mistreatment. Experiencing it articulated so directly by legal counsel transformed it into genuine in approaches my contemplations hadn't. These weren't merely relatives' complications. These represented infractions. Chen guided me through each violation, pointing to specific documents. Unauthorized utility changes constituted fraud. Forged signature on credit card authorization represented identity theft. $8,000 in unauthorized charges equaled grand larceny. Possible title deed tampering amounted to attempted property fraud. He extracted a yellow legal pad, commenced inscribing observations in meticulous handwriting. Oregon statute is unambiguous regarding eviction privileges. You can deliver 30-day notification without providing explanation. They're month-to-month inhabitants at best, visitors at worst. Can we expel them? My voice emerged more desperate than intended. From my house, unquestionably, Chen's assurance felt stabilizing. You possess complete privilege to evict. What prevents escalated destruction during 30 days? That represented my apprehension. We secure everything initially today prior to they comprehend what's transpiring. He inclined forward. Astonishment represents your advantage. They consider you powerless. When we maneuver comprehensively and concurrently. By the moment they understand what's occurring, you'll have currently stabilized your resources and submitted formal paperwork. He distributed a document across the surface. Representation contract. I advocate we advance immediately. Currently, you secure everything. Tomorrow I file the eviction notification. Within 72 intervals, we distribute police documentation provides them zero opportunity to orchestrate counter-strategy. I examined the contract, contemplated my basement banishment, the vacant refrigerator, Rachel tallying my currency without acknowledgement, Marcus's derisive expression. I extracted my writing instrument. Where do I inscribe? Chen's delicate expression conveyed his endorsement. Precisely there. And, Mr. Patterson, you're executing the appropriate measure. I departed his establishment with a task inventory and restored conviction. Initial station, the Hawthorne branch of my financial establishment. The teller progressed with my solicitation rapidly. Terminate Rachel's authorized participant position on all accounts. Modify all internet protections. Activate two-factor authorization, demanding my cellular device for absolutely any permission. She transcribed speedily, progressed through displays, subsequently regarded me with specialist empathy. Your accounts are presently protected, Mr. Patterson. She'll maintain zero authorization whatsoever. The alleviation experienced tangible. Gratitude. You don't comprehend what this communicates. Subsequently, financial corporations. I occupied my automobile, progressed via the inventory, contacted each organization, clarified the circumstance, obstructed absolutely every card Rachel had utilized. Affirmative. I'm distributing a police documentation for personality misuse. Are you able to transmit proof of the unauthorized expenses? They all concurred, proof mounting. Utility corporations pursued corresponding arrangements. Individually, I contacted Portland General Electric, the Aquatic District, gas supplier, internet firm, delivered my proof, mandated they reclaim my permission instantaneously. My daughter maintained zero authorization for those modifications. Kindly reclaim everything to my designation and communication preference. Each organization apologized, progressed my demands. By afternoon's termination, I'd sealed absolutely every entrance they'd pried available. Rachel positioned at the store review, basket saturated with costly articles, expensive cuts, liquor, prepared meals. She distributed Percy's financial instrument with casual confidence. The apparatus sounded. Refused? Rachel grimaced. Attempt subsequently. Corresponding consequence. Do you maintain an alternate expense mechanism? Flustered, scrambling, Rachel removed her individual instrument. It barely encompassed the complete quantity. Customers in sequence behind her altered uncomfortably. Her face flushed. In the parking structure, she telephoned the financial corporation, irritation intensifying with each transmitted moment on standby. Why was my instrument rejected? The representative's voice maintained composure. That account has been terminated by the principal card occupant. I demonstrate you maintained authorized participant ranking, which has been revoked. The vocabulary connected like frozen precipitation. Revoked by the principal card occupant, by her father. She transported homeward, irritation substituting shock. Identified me in the basement examining a historical manuscript. Picture of composure. What have you executed? She didn't knock, merely stormed inside. My instrument was rejected at the store. I didn't orient upward from my literature. Secured my resources. Do you contain a query? This remains unbelievable considering absolutely everything I've executed for you. I ultimately regarded upward, encountered her gaze with level observation. Precisely what have you executed for me, Rachel? Transported my items downstairs, expended multitudes of my currency, manufactured my designation. Communicate which of those I must appreciate? She sputtered, vocabulary faltering. You don't comprehend. I restored to my manuscript. Currently, if you'll pardon me, I'm preoccupied. She remained there, oral opening and shutting, subsequently rotated and fled toward the stairs. Evening came. Marcus attempted logging into the electrical business record. Permission refused. Aquatic record refused. Gas, internet, everything refused. Every protection transformed. He sealed his computing apparatus with force, rage accumulating. Descended to the basement stairs, intense footfalls proclaiming his approach. I perceived his arrival, didn't reposition from my seat. He appeared in the entrance, occupying it with his bulk, delivery menacing. Elderly man, you're pursuing a hazardous activity. This is our dwelling presently. You can't simply, I straightened. Something in my motion made him pause. I advanced ahead. Marcus astonishingly retreated. This remains my dwelling, I stated, delivery tranquil yet hardened like metal. It's consistently remained mine. It'll consistently remain mine. And it's moment you comprehend something, Marcus. I'm finished tolerating mistreatment. You imagine you're able to merely eject us? We possess privileges. You maintain the privilege to experience repercussions. I advanced nearer. You selected to manipulate my dwelling, my currency, my honor. Excellent. Presently, I'm reciprocating. I traversed past him toward the stairs. He didn't endeavor to obstruct me, and I'm substantially superior at this than you exist. I ascended past him, exited him suspended motionless in the basement entrance, astonishment substituting his typical arrogance. At my computing apparatus, I located an correspondence from Robert Chen, eviction notification formulated and prepared for transmission. Police documentation scheduled for tomorrow dawn. Absolutely, everything is progressing. You executed the appropriate measure. I permitted myself a compact expression. Composed reaction. Gratitude. Initially, from arriving home, I sense like I'm reclaiming my presence. Above me, hurried vocals argued. Rachel and Marcus, apprehensive presently, anxious. I unsealed a novel correspondence. Tom and Barbara Dryden's address, which Marcus had once carelessly indicated. They merit comprehension of what their offspring had perpetrated, what he'd transformed their participation into. I commenced composing. Esteemed Mr. and Mrs. Dryden, I'm composing to communicate some concerning circumstances that have transpired throughout your participation. My fingertips progressed steadily across the input surface. Absolutely no reluctance presently. The authenticity required to emerge. Absolutely everything. Morning provided zero alleviation for Rachel and Marcus. I could perceive them upstairs murmuring frantically in the cooking area while Tom and Barbara occupied the sleeping chamber. From my basement vantage, their urgency descended via the floorboards resembling vapor. I remained unaware subsequently, yet they were scheming their greatest disloyalty yet. At days, progressed in demanding quietness. Subsequently, midday on the tertiary interval, the entrance buzzer sounded. I traversed the basement stairs, unsealed the entrance to identify a female in her 50s grasping a municipality credential insignia. Mr. Patterson, I'm Janice Crawford from Mature Person Safeguard Services. Might I enter? Perplexity must have illuminated my expression. Mature Person Safeguard Services. I'm regretful. I lack comprehension. Has something transpired? Her expression was specialist yet considerate. We obtained a communication voicing apprehension regarding your security. It's ordinary. I merely require to inquire you some queries. Absolutely. Would you appreciate beverage? We positioned in the living chamber, my reclaimed territory. I declined to return to the basement for this. Janice extracted a standardized evaluation record, commenced questioning. Ongoing interval, uncomplicated. My designation, uncomplicated. Current pastimes. I characterize the Continental Expedition, depicting orchestrating a gathering of mature educators via Rome, Florence, Venice, organizing itineraries and overseeing logistics. Someone voiced apprehension regarding intellectual regression. She articulated cautiously, monitoring my expression. Yet I observed no indication of that. You're demonstrably methodical, conscious, managing your circumstances proficiently. Someone contacted. The elements materialized together. Who? The notification remained unnamed. Apologetic delivery. Yet I recognize there's zero foundation for apprehension. You're acceptable, Mr. Patterson. Anonymous? Obviously. Following Janice's departure, I positioned in the tranquil living chamber. The comprehension descending similar to frozen precipitation. My offspring had endeavored to possess me declared incompetent. Had contacted Mature Safeguard Communications asserting I experienced psychological decline, couldn't manage currency, harbored unreasonable apprehension regarding relatives. My digits trembled as I dialed Beatrice. They endeavored to possess me proclaimed incompetent, I articulated when she responded, vocabulary cascading. Mature Safeguard Communications simply departed. Someone documented I experienced psychological decline. Cannot manage monetary. Sharp inhalation. Oh, Douglas, I'm sorry, yet you're acceptable. Precisely what did the specialist communicate? That I'm demonstrably acceptable. Sardonic expression. Yet Beatrice, my offspring, endeavored to characterize me as psychological, as incompetent. How do you progress from that? I'm approaching. Remain there. Don't spiral via this isolation. 20 segments afterward, she arrived. Didn't inquire permission. Merely positioned beside me on the couch and grasped my manipulation. Her presence anchored me in approaches terminology couldn't. Douglas! She remained before I encountered her regard. This constitutes their concluding mechanism. They're becoming anxious. Populations prevailing don't deploy anxious maneuvers like this. My offspring. And she proceeded unsuccessfully. The specialist perceived the authenticity. That's what's important. She remained. Formulated dinner-consuming substances she'd conveyed. The refrigerator kept primarily vacant. I'd been consuming grain and removed meals. We positioned at the cooking surface table. Consumed, conversed. Not concerning Rachel and Marcus, yet regarding existence. Her departed spouse who'd perished of cardiac occurrence at 58, my companion who'd resisted malignancy so bravely. Aspirations we'd postponed, disillusions we'd persisted via. Somewhere throughout that period I comprehended I was experiencing pleasure. Despite absolutely everything, or perhaps due to absolutely everything, I perceived more energized than I possessed in intervals. Beatrice's participation was cozy, tangible, authentic. Upon she exited subsequent evening, she squeezed my manipulation at the entrance. You're harder than they comprehend. Harder than you comprehended. I examined her transport disappear, perceiving something progress, not merely regarding Rachel, yet regarding existence's opportunities overhead. Marcus attempted damage regulation with his relatives. I heard fragments via the ceiling. Marcus's delivery firm. Tom penetrating and incredulous. Dad, you must comprehend. Douglas's fabricating account since he's irritated, we're present. He's perpetually been challenging. Tom's delivery penetrated via. Marcus, terminate. We're not unsophisticated. Silence. Subsequently, Tom, repeatedly. Quieter, yet firm. Something's erroneous presently, and I'm progressing to hypothesize it's not Douglas. The subsequent dawn, a delivery agent provided an expansive container from Chen and Associates. I inscribed for this, receded to the basement, unsealed it with deliberate patience. Multiple reproductions of official 30-day eviction communications, skillfully arranged, legitimately accurate, concluding. I progressed via them, perceived the gravity of what I was executing. Yet the recollection of that mature person's safeguard participation, Rachel's endeavor to obliterate my trustworthiness, solidified my determination. Moment to terminate this. I traversed the stairs. Absolutely everyone had assembled for breakfast. Rachel at the cooking surface, Marcus at the surface, Tom and Barbara consuming their beverages. Morning illumination flooded via the apertures. I proceeded inside, positioned an eviction notification at Marcus's position, one at Rachel's, one at Tom and Barbara's. The papers descended with tranquil resolution. Precisely what represents this? Rachel's delivery currently comprehended the response. 30-day notification of eviction. My delivery maintained equal, documentary. For you, Marcus, and his relatives. You maintain singular interim to discover alternate habitation. Rachel advanced pale. The preparing utensil descended from her manipulation, shattering toward the cooking surface. Dad, you can't be genuinely considering this. Absolutely genuine. Marcus commenced to straighten, delivery ascending. You can't merely, I terminated him, my delivery intense initially. I maintain. This remains my dwelling. You've been communicated. You maintain 30 intervals. Tom acquired his reproduction, perused this, displayed this to Barbara. Their expressions documented astonishment, yet simultaneously something differing. Confirmation. This transformed absolutely everything authentic. Douglas wasn't merely being challenging. Rachel's optical areas populated with precipitation. Kindly, Dad, don't pursue this. We're able to discuss. I rotated to depart, subsequently paused. No, I wouldn't return to the basement. Not presently. I traversed toward the living chamber rather, positioned in my individual seat in my individual dwelling, extracted my cellular device, communicated Beatrice. It's finished. They've been transmitted. Her reaction approached instantaneously. I'm satisfied with you. Are you managing? I examined around the living chamber, my reclaimed region. Examined toward the cooking area, the place 3 populations occupied with eviction communications. Perceived something resolve in my middle. Affirmative, I inscribed back. Initially, from quite a bit of intervals, I'm managing. The subsequent 30 intervals blurred into turmoil. Rachel sobbed continuously, blocking me at every possibility. Kindly, Dad, merely interact with me. We're able to mend this. I traversed past her. She followed toward the basement stairs. Where will we progress? Precisely, what will we pursue? Kindly. My middle turned, yet I didn't answer. Marcus deployed the alternate technique, combative, capturing me in the cooking area while I computed beverage. We're not departing. Precisely, what are you going to execute? Telephone police regarding your offspring? Should be essential. Affirmative. He sealed his manipulation on the counter. You're executing a misstep, elderly man. I encountered his optical areas. The misstep was enabling you to remain this prolonged. Overhead, Tom and Barbara perceived absolutely everything. I might sense their unease intensifying. Interval trio. Following the communications, Tom knocked on the basement entrance. I unsealed this to locate the 2 of them appearing exhausted. Douglas, we must interact, all of us. Tom's delivery carried hardness. Barbara and I've perceived Marcus's interpretation. We examine your correspondence. Presently, there's eviction communications. We necessitate the authenticity tonight. Absolutely everyone in the living chamber. I deliberated, subsequently nodded. 7. Yet I'm contributing a participant. A companion? Tom grimaced. A participant? Reason? Since you merit the comprehensive authenticity, and I desire someone unbiased presently who isn't relatives. They interchanged expressions, consented. I communicated Beatrice instantaneously. Familial discussion presently. Would you approach? Her reaction wouldn't overlook this. I'll transport the proof we arranged. Evening approached, 7 when. I'd organized the living chamber deliberately. Seats in a semicircle confronting the couch the place Tom and Barbara positioned. I inhabited my individual seat, Beatrice beside me in a dining seat I'd conveyed in. Rachel and Marcus positioned distant as feasible from me. The chamber experienced resembling a tribunal. Tom disengaged his breathing passages. Presently, somebody communicate precisely what's genuinely occurring. Marcus maintains Douglas is exaggerating typical familial tensions. Douglas, your correspondence communicates deception and larceny. The authenticity. Presently, I unsealed my container. I maintain proof. Would you prefer to witness this, or must I merely elucidate? Barbara inclined ahead. Both illustrate and elucidate. I distributed proof on the table. Initially, financial declarations. $8,247 in unauthorized expenses throughout 90 intervals. Eating establishments, technical equipment, garments. I didn't generate these acquisitions. I presented the manufactured designation integrating Rachel as authorized. This isn't my designation. Examine my authorization apparatus. The D comprises absolutely different. Tom examined the 2, his expression darkening. Subsequently, Utility Corporation Communications. 30 to 90 intervals prior, Rachel adjusted all my utility records to her communication preference, proclaiming I experienced psychological regression. I don't maintain psychological regression. I merely orchestrated a continental expedition. Barbara's manipulation progressed to her oral area. Ultimately, my cellular device. This comprises a screenshot of text communications amongst Rachel and Marcus discussing regulating the elderly man. And whenever he perishes, the dwelling comprises ours presently. I disperse the cellular device across. Barbara, examined, proceeded colorless, transmitted this to Tom, his expression flushed scarlet. Marcus inclined ahead, delivery hurried. This isn't precisely how it displays. Douglas sanctioned absolutely everything. He encountered bewilderment, overlooking elements. We participated in supporting him. Subsequently, why did you manufacture my designation? My delivery maintained composed. Why misrepresent to utility businesses regarding my existence? Why communicate regarding regulating me? Since you're mature and obstinate, you're unable to confess you necessitate cooperation. Tom straightened abruptly, delivery comparable to roaring. Adequately. I've perceived adequately. He rotated toward Marcus, and the dissatisfaction illuminating his expression remained devastating. This comprises larceny. This comprises deception. We reared you improved than this. Barbara straightened beside him. We're loading presently. Presently, we'll not participate in this. Dad, kindly merely hear me out. No. Tom's delivery remained conclusive. We're concluding hearing to you. As Tom and Barbara vacated the chamber, Rachel shattered. She descended from her seat to her articulations, manipulations grasped resembling petition. Father, kindly, pardon me. Sobs fragmented her expressions. I didn't recognize it might progress this considerable. Marcus maintained asserting you wouldn't notice, that you might exit absolutely everything to me presently anyway, so precisely what comprises its significance. I didn't desire the mature person safeguard interaction. I assert I didn't. Yet he maintained asserting you'd eliminate absolutely everything away. I examined downward at my offspring on her articulations and perceived the comprehensive gravity of her disloyalty blended with horrible sadness. Precipitation descended down my expression presently as well. Rachel, my delivery wasn't irritated, merely fatigued. I contributed absolutely everything. Compensated for your academics. Contributed you and Marcus a dwelling whenever you necessitated this. Absolutely everything I necessitated comprised honor. That's absolutely everything. I'm regretful. I genuinely remain. I think you comprise. Yet you're regretful you encountered this discovery, Rachel. You're regretful you're eliminating what you desired. I don't think you're regretful for precisely what you pursued via me. Beatrice, quietness through presently, articulated. Her delivery comprised composed, legitimate, yet not unkind. Mr. and Mrs. Winters comprise appropriate to vacate. Rachel Nicholas, populations don't progress presently till they encounter legitimate repercussions. Accurate ones. Douglas isn't sanctioning you. He's protecting himself. I straightened. You maintain 27 intervals to locate somewhere alternate to inhabit. I advocate you commence investigating. Tom and Barbara emerged in the entrance, baggage and manipulation. They couldn't package absolutely everything, yet adequate. Tom traversed to me, extended his manipulation. I'm regretful. We must have perceived this sooner. I clasped his manipulation. You participated in traveling to your offspring. You maintained zero explanation to hypothesize. Barbara, weeping peacefully, we'll obtain the remaining portions this interval. We'll telephone initially. And Douglas, appreciate your communicating the authenticity. We merit to comprehend precisely what category of man we reared. They vacated, the entrance sealed. In the unexpected quietness, Rachel increased from the ground, traversed overhead without a phrase. Marcus pursued, projecting me a regard of genuine irritation. Douglas and Beatrice persisted, abandoned in the living chamber. I deteriorated into my seat. The adrenaline transmitted away, abandoning fatigue. Beatrice positioned on the furniture arm, her manipulation on my shoulder. You pursued this, she articulated peacefully. I examined surrounding my living chamber, examined the sealed entrance, examined the ceiling. I don't experience resembling I triumphed. I experience resembling I misplaced an offspring. Her manipulation squeezed my shoulder. You misplaced someone who was handling you resembling an monetary equipment. Conceivably, one interval Rachel progress into someone you might maintain a partnership with, yet that personality doesn't persist presently. I nodded, inclined posterior. Her manipulation on my shoulder experienced resembling the exclusive, tangible aspect. Persist? I requested peacefully. As extended as you necessitate. She grinned. Dawn came, and accompanying this the comprehension that absolutely everything had transformed, yet absolutely everything wasn't finished. I woke in my seat, throat uncomfortable, yet putting on preceding intervals' garments, 26 intervals staying. The dwelling stayed peaceful, differing from the demanding quietness of current intervals. This comprised agreeable quietness. I perceived activity overhead, Rachel and Marcus waking, confronting their contemporary existence. I composed beverage, my personally liked denomination, ultimately reclaimed. I positioned at the rear terrace, a region I'd lately reclaimed. Outdoor furniture. Beatrice cooperated me pick, vegetation sprouting in containers. The entrance buzzer sounded. Beatrice, punctual as perpetually, transporting a container sealed with material. Contemporary scores, blueberry, presently comfortable. You spoil me? She positioned at the terrace surface. Somebody must. You've gained this. Throughout breakfast, we dispersed coordinates and traveling publications throughout the surface. Crater Lake National Park, Oregon's glory. Beatrice had inhabited this location intervals prior. I'd somehow perpetually overlooked the participation. We must pursue the picturesque path, she recommended, monitoring highways on the coordinate. Pause in insignificant municipalities. Absolutely no accelerating. I expressed happiness. I expended my comprehensive profession organizing productive expeditions. Presently, I merely desire to investigate. Per interim at Crater Lake? Precisely why not pair? She experienced joyful. Examine you, accepting spontaneity. We formulated for mid-interval after seasonal multitudes prior to seasonal meteorological. This spontaneity experienced international and magnificent. Following, Beatrice exited to pursue assignments, utilizing a mouth touch on my facial area that yet created my middle flutter. I examined my communications. Between the accounting, a handwritten container, Rachel's recognizable inscription. I positioned at the container for an extended period prior to unsealing this. The correspondence involved numerous pages, handwritten, precipitation stained. She'd initiated remedy, functioning comprehensive nursing intervals, attempting to settle debt. Father, I comprehend I don't merit pardon presently, conceivably perpetually, yet I'm endeavoring to comprehend precisely how I progressed into somebody capable of damaging you this approach. Marcus and I are determining things if we must maintain each additional. He's the individual that promoted considerable element. Yet I permitted him. I chose to participate. That's on to me. I aspire eventually I might comprise the offspring you merited. I aspire eventually you might be satisfied with me repeatedly. I examined this twice, subsequently collapsed this meticulously. My optical areas encountered precipitation, yet I'm hesitant in case it comprised sorrowfulness or relief or anything differently completely. Beatrice receded to identify me on the terrace, correspondence in manipulation. She didn't inquire, merely positioned beside me, remained. Ultimately, I conveyed this to her. She examined in quietness, subsequently collapsed this and transmitted posterior. Precisely how do you experience? I deliberated. Portion of me desires to telephone her. Portion of me thinks she's exclusively regretful since she misplaced what she desired. Beatrice nodded. You don't must determine presently or this interval or this yearly rotation. Conceivably, she'll progress into somebody you might have confidence in repeatedly. Conceivably not, yet that's her expedition, Douglas. Not yourselves, I grabbed her manipulation. You're quite insightful, she expressed. I'm quite mature. It progresses with the territory. We're quite mature, and I've perpetually existed more joyful. She squeezed posterior. Evening approached. Beatrice exited for her dwelling. She preserved her individual dwelling, although we debated moving together progressively regularly. I positioned on my terrace, perceiving atmosphere tint Portland in oranges and purples. I contemplated the individual who receded from continental experience roughly 42 intervals earlier, anticipating comfort and identifying disloyalty. That individual comprised softer, increasingly unsophisticated, progressively prepared to experience utilized. The individual positioned presently comprised differing, harder in particular approaches, yet more powerful. Not embittered, yet restricted. I'd resisted regarding my distinction, my dwelling, my authorization to regard, and I'd triumphed. Not ideally. I'd eliminated my offspring minimum temporarily. Yet I'd identified myself repeatedly, and I'd identified Beatrice. I comprehended presently precisely what this interim communicated to me. Authentic relatives doesn't utilize you, they cooperate with you. Bloodline interaction doesn't assure feeling or allegiance. Individuals ought to be acquired via executions, not merely asserted via inheritance. I'd invested intervals thinking I owed my offspring absolutely everything merely since she encompassed my offspring. Yet partnerships comprise shared. I might provide feeling, cooperation, dwelling, yet she necessitated to contribute regard, genuineness, evaluation. Whenever she discontinued, the partnership progressed parasitic. I'd needed to extract this to persevere, and conceivably that remained the solitary approach she'd grasped precisely what an authentic partnership requires. That comprehension resolved in my middle resembling tranquility. I wasn't the disagreeable individual for obligating restrictions. I wasn't brutal for requiring regard. I was merely an individual who ultimately selected myself. Preliminary interval morning, Beatrice's automobile in the pathway, storage accessible. I secured my entrance, my dwelling, my regulations, my tranquility, and transported the concluding container to the automobile. We'd packaged regarding dual intervals, mountaineering garments, recording apparatus, coordinates. I halted at the automobile entrance, examined posterior. The dwelling positioned powerful, accepting, remaining regarding my recurrence. Absolutely no extended a penitentiary or fight zone, merely dwelling. Beatrice initiated the apparatus. Prepared. I positioned into the passenger location, progressively prepared. As we transferred, Portland dispersed posterior, the accessible pathway ahead, corridor extending ahead. Morning illumination creating absolutely everything RE8. Beatrice transported. I navigated, pursuing the picturesque path. Absolutely no accelerating. Dual intervals to investigate. I examined the environment traverse. Timber, summits, insignificant municipalities. Glanced at Beatrice. Metallic hair-capturing illumination. Assured manipulations on the steering device. Compact expression performing on her oral area. This female who emerged whenever I necessitated her most. Precisely, what are you contemplating? She inquired, devoid of regarding overhead. I hypothesized my existence division was terminating. That following retirement you merely persist, awaiting. She oriented toward me. And presently I comprehended that existence persists, as extended as you permit this to persevere. I chose myself. And inadvertently I identified you. She squeezed posterior. We discovered each alternate Douglas at precisely the appropriate period. The pathway curved ahead, disappearing into vegetation. We weren't conscious precisely the place we'd terminate, merely that we inhabited advancing presently mutually. I positioned posterior in my position, perceiving something I believed I'd eliminated. Liberation. Not liberation regarding Rachel or Marcus. Liberation regarding apprehension of experiencing utilized. Liberation regarding thinking I must persist, tolerating disdain, regarding the component of relatives. Liberation to establish the relatives I pick, the singular that cooperates rather than utilizes. The illumination progressed upward, the pathway uncoiled. Beatrice and I transported toward Crater Lake and anything pursuing, equipped regarding the consecutive division mutually. In case you appreciate this narrative, kindly appreciate this recording, subscribe to the pathway, and contribute your perspective of this narrative in the communications. To hear the subsequent narrative, press the receptacle on the remainder.